gave a lot for us.
We owe it to them.
I'm overwhelmed by the emotion of assisting with this project.
Doing this today, I think, is giving them the honor that they deserved back then.
It's going to be a beautiful day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special ceremony. At this time, I ask those who are able to please rise for our national anthem and remain standing for the invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Well, I'd like to thank the vocalist, Gabriel Sepulveda, and I guess I had the same problem he did. We'll get that ironed out. And, of course, the VM A and C Regimental Band for our wonderful, wonderful invocation. It's my pleasure now to introduce the chaplain for tonight's ceremony, Chaplain Colonel Douglas Etter.
Pray with me. Almighty God, we gather together on this beautiful spring evening, united in a common purpose, to honor and to remember the men and women whose names are etched in this wall and those who stood with them. Their names, their laughter, their love are forever carved in the hearts of those who cared for them, those who knew them, and those who served with them. We pray, O God, that you would grant unto those who have been forced to drink the bitter dregs of combat peace, perfect peace. And for those who struggled and came home, and those who came home and struggled, grant unto them as well, O God, your perfect peace. May this wall be one which does not divide, but one that unites. Not one that holds back, but one that draws together. May we never forget their service or their sacrifice. We ask it in the name of you who remember and know all. Amen.
Well, welcome to tonight's ceremony. I'm Rob Hanrahan from CBS 21 News and CBS's Face the State Sunday political show. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. We're so glad you're here to recognize that we have also so many Vietnam veterans in the audience. I had a great conversation with the gentleman right back there just before we started our program. We thank all of you for your service, and if you're able to do so, we would like you to stand so we can recognize those veterans who, along with those whose names are present on this memorial, are the reason that we are here tonight. I have some acknowledgments I'd like to go through real quick. We would like to recognize the efforts of the members of the Wall That Heals Host Committee, some of whom are present here right now tonight. The co-chairs, the Honorable Joseph B. Scarnati III, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and the Honorable Mike Turzai, the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House. Major General Tony Corelli, the Adjutant General of Pennsylvania, attending, and the Honorable Jay Costa Jr., Democratic Leader of the Senate. The Honorable Stephen E. Barrar, Chair, House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Honorable Christopher Sonato, Pennsylvania House of Representatives, attending, he is here. The Honorable Randy Volakovich, the Chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Edgar Burris Jr., State Veterans Commission. Julian Gaudian, the Deputy Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of General Services. John B. Getz Jr., State Adjutant and Quartermaster, Veterans of Foreign Wars, attending here tonight, right down there, right here, on this side. Thomas Haberkorn, Pennsylvania State Council President, the Vietnam Veterans of America. I didn't get the seating assignments right, did I? I keep looking in the wrong side. Kit D. Watson, Adjutant, the American Legion, also in attendance tonight. And in addition to the members of the host committee, we have other members of the General Assembly with us this evening. Senator Lisa Baker of the 20th District, Senator John DeSanto of the 15th District, Senator Mike Regan of the 31st District, Senator Gene Yaw represents the 23rd District. He is also a Vietnam-era veteran, having served as an artillery officer overseas. Representative Sue Helm of the 104th Legislative District, Representative Brett Miller, 41st Legislative District. We'd also like to recognize Major General Walter Lord. He is the president of the Valley Forge Military Academy and College, who is with us this evening, and we want to thank him for providing the regimental band for the evening's invocation. Yeah, they deserve it. Great job, you guys. Representative Stephen Barrar, Chair of the House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Representative Barrar served in the U.S. Navy from 1973 to 1975. He had a role in the evacuation of South Vietnam as a radio man on the USS Blue Ridge, which became the flagship for Operation Frequent Winds, the final military operation in Vietnam. I would like to bring Mr. Representative Barrar up.
Thank you.
And you've got something special for us.
Great, thank you. It's an honor to be here today. We're here today to honor those who died during the Vietnam War. Those 58,000 names on this healing wall all died way too soon, and they all had a story to tell. But also, we're here to celebrate the men and women who served there, who fought there, and those still MIA. They went to Vietnam because their country asked them to, and we thank you for your courage and sacrifice. America is a better place because of it. So those of you that have served, let me say to you, welcome home. We're very proud of you. When you think of Vietnam, just think of that word. To our generation, it has so many different meanings, and it will define American foreign policy and military policy for probably the next 40 years. I joined the Navy back in 1973. I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, and then I went to radio communication school in San Diego and had the, I would say, fortune to serve on the USS Blue Ridge. But I saw the fall of Saigon, and I watched the American flag replaced by the communist North Vietnamese flag, which I think was a very sad day in America. But I'm here today because it's my pleasure and honor to recognize the former members of the Senate and the House who are Vietnam-era veterans. Please stand as I say your name. Senator Earl Baker, if you would. Senator Earl Baker, an officer in the United States Navy, was assigned to the destroyer DD-732 in Newport, Rhode Island, which was part of the patrolling perimeter during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He also did extensive anti-submarine warfare exercises with the carrier USS Wasp. Operating in the Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean, he was the deck officer from 1962 to 1964. He was awarded the National Defense Service Medal for his military service. Senator Baker, thank you so much. A 1966 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point, Senator Bob Robbins. Senator Robbins served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and during his first tour of duty, he served as the company commander with D Company, 1st Battalion, 105 Airborne Infantry, 2nd Brigade, 101st Airborne Division. He served as an advisor to the South Vietnamese Infantry Battalion during his 2nd tour of duty. Senator Robbins was discharged from the Army in 1971 as a well-decorated captain with numerous medals for service to his country. He continues to serve his country. Currently, he holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the Pennsylvania wing of the Civil Air Patrol. Senator Robbins is also former chairman of the Senate Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Senator Robbins, thank you so much for your service. Senator Tim Schaefer. Enlisted in the Army in 1968 and graduated from Officer Candidate School. He served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970 in the Signal Corps and was stationed with the 25th Infantry Division in Tai Ni, close enough, and Cu Chi. Okay, Lieutenant Schaefer received the Bronze Star in his recognition for his military service. Thank you, Senator. One of my counterparts here, Representative Russ Fairchild. There he is. Great to have you here. Served in the United States Army from 1967 to 1969. For his service as an infantry platoon leader in Vietnam, he was awarded the Bronze Star. He is an honorary member of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. I would like to also add that during his time in the House of Representatives, Representative Fairchild served as my predecessor as chairman of the House Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. We are also honored, thank you. We are also honored to have families of former House members who are now deceased with us in the audience this evening, and please stand as you are introduced. We would like to welcome the family of Representative Robert Belafonte. Is his family here? Thank you for being here with us tonight. The family of John Brocious. Thank you. And the family of Representative Gerald Spitz, who was my representative. Is the family here? Great. Good seeing you. And also the family of Representative Tom Tighe, also a former chairman of the Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. And thank you for joining us this evening. Your presence enhances this special event and makes tonight even more memorable. May God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I would like to introduce to you Senator John DeSanto. Senator DeSanto represents the 15th Pennsylvania District, Dauphin and Perry counties. Senator.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, everyone. Before I start my official remarks, I just would like to thank Governor Ridge and General Corrali here for doing me a personal favor prior to the start of tonight's event. A longtime friend and co-worker of mine served with the Marines, 1st Division in Vietnam, and has never sought out any recognition, and I've been chasing him for years to try to get the Vietnam pin, and he wouldn't do it, and Governor Ridge graciously awarded that to him tonight, and Gary Farling could not run away from this when he was surrounded, so congratulations, Gary. Thank you. Born in Pittsburgh's Steel Valley and raised in Erie, Governor Tom Ridge is well-known as one of our nation's most respected public servants. From his decorated service in Vietnam to Congress, from the governor's office to serving as our nation's first Homeland Security Secretary, he is well respected across the nation and overseas. A strong and visionary leader, he has gained and deserved a reputation as an innovator. Following the tragic events of September 11, 2001, Tom Ridge became the first assistant to the President for Homeland Security, and on January 24, 2003, became the first Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Before the events of September 11th, Tom Ridge was twice elected governor of Pennsylvania, serving as the state's 43rd governor from 1995 to 2001. Known for his commitment to high standards and results, Governor Ridge delivered on his promise to make Pennsylvania a leader among states and a competitor among nations. Governor Ridge's aggressive technological strategy helped fuel the state's advances in economic development, education, healthcare, and the environment. Tom Ridge was elected to Congress in 1982, one of the first Vietnam combat veterans elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Since 2005, Governor Ridge has served as chairman of the National Organization on Disability, along with former Senator Joe Lieberman. He co-chairs the Blue Ribbon Study Panel on Biodefense. Governor Ridge continues to contribute to matters concerning our nation's veterans, along with General Tommy Franks, and serves as the national co-chairman of the Flight 93 Memorial Fundraising Campaign. He's chairman of Ridge Global Risk Management Consulting Firm and a partner and founding member of the Ridge Policy Group, a bipartisan government relations and issue management firms with offices located in Harrisburg and Washington. Governor Ridge and my good friend, long time, thank you, welcome.
Thank you very much, folks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Senator, thank you for that very warm and generous introduction. Thank you for your very warm welcome on this very beautiful spring evening in the greatest capital city in all of America. Once a governor, always a governor. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. I want to thank representatives from the Academy. Thank you for joining us tonight. Been to Valley Forge several times, your school. I had a a close relative went there years ago. My good friend John McCain and I visited a long time ago. You're in the hands of a great new leader. New Major General is going to be your principal, your headmaster, your mentor, your disciplinarian. He's got all kinds of hats he's going to be wearing, so good luck with each and every one of them, but thank you for your presence. Thank you very much. Thank you. And to all of you who took the time this evening, a welcome and a good evening. During my life, the opportunity to serve my community, this Commonwealth, and our country has come to me in many, many different forms. None of the responsibilities or titles that I've ever enjoyed or have been privileged to be afforded are as great a source of personal satisfaction than Infantry Staff Sergeant, Vietnam vet. I can't imagine a better reference. I'm honored to be with all of you this evening, but particularly to be in the company of fellow Vietnam veterans. Some who are presently serving. Some are now serving in the House and the Senate. Some of my colleagues from yesteryear have been introduced previously. See some of my brethren in the back row. Vietnam veterans don't take a back seat to anybody. You ought to stand up and be recognized. Stand up. I want my Vietnam veterans to stand up. You got it. That's better. Thank you. You know, I must tell you, I looked at the audience when you asked the Vietnam veterans to stand up, and only 2 or 3 stood up. I said, I know a lot of those folks out there, the last thing they are is shy. That's for sure. But this evening in part is for you as we remember so many others. Thanks for being here. I also, is this microphone working? Well, you know what? I'll just have to speak a little louder. I also want to extend my deep appreciation. Oh, we got the technical difficulties worked out. Beautiful, beautiful. I want to extend my appreciation to the Pennsylvania General Assembly and the bipartisan leadership that invited me to participate. And let me emphasize the bipartisan nature of the invitation and this event. The men and women we honor tonight didn't have to declare their political affiliation when they put on the uniform of their country. It didn't make any difference to them, and it sure shouldn't make any difference to us now. We need to understand that. The bipartisan nature of this event demonstrates that civil discussion around common interests often finds common ground. Tonight, our common ground and our common goal is to remember and to honor those who wore the uniform of our country 4 and 5 decades ago in a place few citizens then, and perhaps even maybe a few citizens now, couldn't point to a map and tell you where it's located. Picture, if you will, with me now, the following. On a clear, cloudless night with a brilliant full moon and a full canopy of iridescent stars, the soldier on the ground in country imagines the dawn of a new day. The Vietnam veterans here understand the evenings I'm talking about. He may have been in watchtower on the perimeter of a fire base. He might have been on night patrol. He might have been waiting in ambush. He may be lying on his back behind a wire perimeter, looking toward the sky, thinking about home. The heavens were unbelievably bright, yet when the soldier checked his watch, it was only 2 a.m. The sunlight of a new day was hours away. Tomorrow would be a gift, he said, and she said. One more day to persevere, to adjust, one more day to survive. One more day before your 12th or 13th month tour was over. Then you could return home to enjoy the blessings of liberty and freedom unknown to the citizens of the country in which you were serving and in which you were fighting. Not that we counted the days every day, at least not until we become short-timers. Once you were short, sometimes you started marking off the calendar because you had 100 days or less. But that night, all thought about a hot shower, a very cold beer, a real bed, home-cooked meals, mom and dad, sister and brother, girlfriend, spouse, and friends. As you were there that evening, a better tomorrow back in what you used to phrase as the world always beckoned over the horizon, always. And this evening, we honor those whose tomorrow never came. From 1964 through 1975, over 9 million men and women served on active duty, and nearly 2.7 million men and women served in country in Vietnam. They raised their right hand at the induction service to serve their country, and perhaps even more importantly, to serve each other. Over 58,000 were killed in Vietnam, in the rice paddies, the jungles, back at base camp. Hundreds of thousands sustained both visible and invisible wounds, and nearly half the wounded required hospitalization, and so many of them bear the lingering effects through today. The men and women we honor here tonight died in service to their country and in selfless sacrifice in support of those with whom they served. Over 60%, and I hope you listen carefully to this, over 60% of those who perished never celebrated a 22nd birthday. Over 3,200 Pennsylvanians hold a place of honor on this memorial. Their service and sacrifice and that of their comrades is forever memorialized on that wall in our nation's capital. It was visionary, but it was also very, very important that the names of the fallen be etched in black granite. It was important because statistics were often employed like some trivial baseball or football score to infer progress on a promised march toward victory. Oh, the enemy sustained more casualties than we did. Soulless statistics, which hid the sadness and the sorrow of the families who lost their sons and daughters, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters. In November of 1982, the Wall of Honor was dedicated to our fallen comrades and remains one of the most frequently visited memorials in our country. It's tough to compute, but I'm going to say roughly 40 to 50% of Americans were either too young or weren't even born after the last person fell, the last soldier fell in Vietnam. Think about that. Everybody 43 years of age or younger wasn't even born the time we withdrew our last soldier from the battlefield. So today, their knowledge, and those of others, of that tumultuous period in American history is generally limited to a few paragraphs in a couple civics books. That's if, in fact, it's even remembered at all. Periodic reflections of journalists or soldiers and an occasional TV program appear over Memorial Day or Veterans Day. At times, it seems America wanted to ignore what it considered an inglorious period of American military and political history. It seemed to prefer the quick transition from the laudable and justifiable proud celebrations of the World War II greatest generation, and we know they were, quickly to the proud embrace and support of those combating the global scourge of terrorism in a post-9/11 world. While historians will forever debate America's involvement in Southeast Asia, there is one profoundly positive and important legacy associated with my fellow Vietnam veterans. America has finally learned to distinguish between the war and the warrior. Regardless how individual citizens view the role our military has and continues and will continue to play, we are universally grateful for the sacrifice and service of those who have answered their call, and I might add, the sacrifice and service of their families as well. I can't forget the families. We can't forget that where mom and dad puts on the uniform, the other spouse puts on the uniform, the kids put on the uniform, and they're at the call at the commander-in-chief. And if you got to move once, you move 5 times, you move 10 times. That's just the quality of the men and women we have in our military. But I believe this distinction between the war and the warrior was led by Vietnam veterans who remember all too well the reception they frequently encountered upon their return home. Rarely warm and hardly welcoming, too often petulant, provocative. I don't know a single Vietnam veteran who isn't proud of the men and women who are wearing the uniform of the country today. I don't know a single Vietnam veteran who isn't proud of their own service, notwithstanding the country's mixed feelings about our involvement back then and even some lingering doubts today. And I don't know of a single Vietnam veteran who hasn't thought about a comrade in arms whose name is etched in this black granite and who hasn't privately said to himself, or maybe to someone real close to him that would understand, there, but for the grace of God, go I. Same mud, same blood was the expression we heard. The wall is a reminder of how the burden and the pain and the suffering of a war is shared across many ethnic, religious, and racial communities that sadly today seem so divided. My dear friend, and he's a dear friend and a great American and a great patriot, John McCain, wrote about some abiding truths he learned during his distinguished military career, and I quote, "Heroism is not the birthright of great men or famous men or men with stars on their shoulders, but finds its most noble expression in common men and women, in circumstances less dazzling than any Hollywood thriller, who give everything of themselves to save a life or serve a cause. That principles are worth dying for, and that freedom is worth living for every day." A few years after the wall was commemorated, a statue of 3 combat veterans looking to their right. A seemingly over-the-shoulder glance at the wall was added. Observers undoubtedly interpret the relationship between the two in very different ways. Let us this evening draw from it our own abiding truths. That those who served in Vietnam and survived have a continuing responsibility to remind our fellow countrymen that soldiers don't select the wars they are called upon to fight. That the courage and sacrifice of those who fought by their side in Vietnam remains as worthy of the quiet and sustained gratitude of their fellow citizens as those who have so nobly and heroically served their country at other times in other places. And that those with whom we served in Vietnam were and are patriots. The wall is a powerful and emotional reminder of those simple truths as well. It is now time to bring to light the 58,318 names of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you, and may God continue to bless the greatest country on the face of this earth.
As you can see, the wall is now lit up. And I'd like to introduce Major General Tony Corella, who was confirmed by the Senate of Pennsylvania as the 53rd Adjutant General of Pennsylvania in 2016 in his cabinet-level position with the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, headquartered at Fort Indiantown Gap. General Corelli is responsible for the command, control, and supervision of the National Guard units, Army, and Air, allocated to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 6 state-owned veterans homes and programs for Pennsylvania's 845,000 veterans. General Corelli is a 1985 graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy and a command pilot with more than 4,500 hours of flying experience. During his 31-year career, General Corelli deployed in numerous operations, and let me list these here. They include Desert Storm, Southern Watch, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He served as commander of the 111th Fighter Wing in Horsham and the 171st Air Refueling Wing in Pittsburgh, and as Deputy Adjutant General. Here he is, Major General Corelli.
Thank you all, and good evening. It's a great honor for me to represent Governor Wolf and be with you this evening. Thanks to everyone for coming out to make this ceremony extra special for the families, for those that served in Vietnam, for our veterans, for our currently serving military. Thank you so much for your service and sacrifice to this great country. The Vietnam Wall has a storied history, and as you can see behind me, the architecture is very simple. The curves, there's not a lot of different shapes. It's a very straight wall. It's a very straight geometric, architecturally designed, but it's very powerful. And I think everyone agrees that it's an extremely emotional and passionate representation of the Vietnam era. 58,318 names lay etched on the walls behind me. But it's a lot more than just names. I mean, and you can see the names, but each one of those names comes with a face, and each one of those faces comes with a family. 58,318 families paid the ultimate sacrifice during the Vietnam War. You know, some of those families are with us today. Many of those that served right alongside, to your left or your right, your battle buddies, your airmen, your wingmen, that you fellow served. The names are on the wall behind you, and everyone has a different story. Myself, I was born in 1963, and as Governor Ridge had mentioned, my first memories of the Vietnam War was on TV, watching the news every single night. They would show what happened in Vietnam, and it would be the storied body counts. Those are my first memories of Vietnam. A very good friend of mine, his name was Mike DeLuca. He was one of my best friends growing up. Later on in life, he was in my wedding. He was part of my wedding. Mike never had a dad, and I never understood that growing up as a young child. And as we got older, I'd ask my dad, who was also in the Marine Corps, whatever happened to Mike's dad? How come Mike doesn't have a dad? And he's like, Mike's dad was killed in Vietnam. And I later was to find out he was a career Marine. He had been in the Marine Corps his entire life. He was a Korean War vet, and had traveled to Vietnam fairly early, 1965. In the summer of 1965, Mike's dad was killed. So it was Mike, his older brother George Jr., his father's name was George, and his mom. And they lived just the three of them in a house. His mom had 2 jobs, a single mom, back in the 60s. Never knew really the story until we had gotten older. But that's my connection. That's my personal connection to a Vietnam family. And I remember when the wall, I think I was still at the Air Force Academy, about to be commissioned when the wall was first commissioned. And it was a couple of years after that, by the time I got to Washington, D.C. for the first time to look at the wall. And I came to the wall, and at that time, you had to go to the park ranger, and it had lists and lists of names, and you gave them the name. And of all the people on the name, and of course I know from my studies at the Air Force Academy, I knew a lot about the Vietnam history, and I knew a lot of the names that were on the wall, but I didn't know any of the families other than the DeLuca family. So that first trip to the wall, I asked the ranger, George DeLuca, and they looked it up for me, and they said, panel 2 east. And if you look over my left shoulder, at the very corner of the wall, you start going to the right, it's the second panel, that's 2 east. They start to be in the middle. And he's on line 51. Count 5 dots plus 1 row. Second to the last name on the right, George A. DeLuca. That's my Vietnam family. That's who I know. That's the family that I know on this wall. And how many people here know numerous families that are on that wall? And I say to you, our commitment here tonight is to renew that relationship with those families. Okay, it's not just names etched on a wall. As I said, those names have faces, they have families. They have parents, brothers, sisters, siblings, sons and daughters, spouses that felt the pain, the hardship of the extreme sacrifice when their service member was killed and their name was finally etched on that wall. That's what really today is about. It's really about making that commitment to remember those families and continue to take care of those families. Within the service, we always talk about never leaving a battle buddy behind, always looking, always having someone's back. When you take off that uniform, that doesn't end. It is still our responsibility to have their backs and to still take care of their families. Part of that in Pennsylvania, the governor had mentioned, there's 3,151 Pennsylvanians on this wall behind us. We've been on a mission in Pennsylvania to find a face for every single one of those service members. We have 32 left. We've been doing this for a couple of years. There's 32 names left that we still do not have a picture for. So I would ask you all, please, go to our website. Just Google veterans.pa.gov, and you'll see Wall of Faces. And it's the Vietnam Wall, and it's all the Pennsylvanians that are on the wall. We have 32 left that we have been unable to find. And we've been doing this for a couple of years. There's 2 names in the Pittsburgh area. There's 26 names in the Philadelphia area. And there's about 4 names scattered in a couple of counties in northeast Pennsylvania. We are on that mission, and we are not going to stop. So I implore your help to find every single one of those names. And please help me keep our promise to these families that we will never forget them, and they will always be in our thoughts and our prayers. As long as we remember these names, we remember those families, they will never be forgotten. So I thank you for that. At this time, as a great tradition within our military ceremonies is to lay wreaths to honor those 58,318 names, the nearly 1,500 missing in action, and the hundreds of thousands of family members, the fathers, the mothers, the brothers, the sisters, the spouses, the kids of those that are etched in the walls behind me. So at this time, I'd like to call the official party up for the laying of the wreath on behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a gesture to honor those that are on this wall.
I'd like to bring up now Chaplain Etter for our closing prayer.
Now receive the benediction. Remember those who have gone on before you, those whose names are carved into this wall. Their sacrifice teaches service to country is more important than self. They are the pathfinders. Remember those who are in uniform today. Remember their families. They are the guarantors of our freedom and the protection of our nation and our Constitution, our way of life. They are our protectors. And remember those who are coming after them. Remember our children, our grandchildren, and those who are yet unborn, for they are our promise and the hope of not only our nation, but all humankind. Amen.
observing a moment of silence there. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the memorial. And please invite all your friends out to look at it and think about what it really means. Great, moving speech, Governor Ridge, thank you, and everybody else who spoke tonight. I'm really moved by this ceremony. Thanks again for coming.